Conversations with Nicole. Conversations with Nicole. Let's talk about it. Tell me all about it. I'm here. I want to know what's on your mind. Ooh, the world needs to hear from you, and I'm so glad to have a conversation to reach the nation. And it's all about you. We'll help each other to discover innovative ways to positively change the world. Let's talk about, let's talk about, let's talk about Conversations with Nicole.
Greetings. Welcome to Conversations with Nicole. I am Nicole Everett, your host, and Conversations with Nicole is a talk show based in Tallahassee, Florida, focused on connecting the community through conversations. And today is what I call Mindset Monday. Mindset Monday is an opportunity for you, me, and my guests to talk about what we want to talk about. And today we are talking about how to always ask about suicide. September is Suicide Prevention and Awareness Month. And my very special guest is no stranger to Conversations with Nicole, Dr. Shairi Turner. And I'm so excited and delighted to have her with us here tonight. But before I bring her on, I want to hear from you. Let us know what city and state you are tuning in from by putting it in the comments. We are live on Facebook, live on YouTube, as well as live streaming on the Greater Works Network on RokuTV. So this is an interactive live. This is an opportunity for us to engage with one another and just share and maybe get some new insights on some things. So again, I want to hear from you. So please chime in. We do fully expect to engage with you in terms of your comments and your questions. So I see you, Miss Michelle, Keep Evolving Wellness Center. Thank you for being here. I think she's in New Jersey, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, I see you. All right. Benicia, clinician in Tallahassee. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you. My mom is checking in from Miami. Thank you, Ma. I love you. So there'll be others joining us, and that's fine. So tag a friend, let them know they need to be on here, because this is going to be quite the conversation. I haven't had a suicide chat in quite some time, but I think it's definitely something we need to be talking about on a regular basis, especially during Suicide Awareness Month. I see you, Anthony Williams in West Palm Beach. Thank you for being here. My brother Quasi, peace and blessings out of Atlanta. Thank you for being here. And my sister Shayla in South Florida in Broward County. Thank you for being here. So Dr. Shairi Turner is an internist and pediatrician with an extensive background in trauma and trauma-informed practices. Currently, she is the Chief Medical Officer for the Crisis Text Line, where she leads the policy and advocacy initiatives related to mental health and crisis intervention. Crisis Text Line is a national nonprofit organization delivering 24/7 free, high-quality mental health support and crisis intervention by text, which I'm sure she will tell us a bit more about that throughout our conversation. She has many, many accolades, and I'm going to quickly run through some of these, but she served as Chief Medical Director for the Florida Department of Juvenile Justice. She also established the Office of Health Services that provided oversight over provisions of health, mental health, disability, and substance abuse services. From 2009 to 2011, she served as the Deputy Secretary for Health and Interim State Surgeon General for the Florida Department of Health. She was a faculty consultant for the National Center for Trauma-Informed Care. She holds a research faculty appointment at the Florida State University College of Social Work, a native of New York City. She earned her undergraduate degree in biology from Stanford, her doctor of medicine from Case Western University School of Medicine. And she is also married to my homeboy, Dr. Jimmy Davis Jr., and they have two beautiful student athletes who are now college students. So y'all help me welcome Dr. Shairi Turner.
Thank you, Nicole. High five.
How you
It's great
doing?
to be here.
Yeah, you good?
I'm good. I'm good
Good.
as I can be.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Well, so glad that you are here and talking about this very important topic. So, before we dive in, I want you to tell the peoples who is Dr. Shairi Turner. I talked about some of the things that you have done, and I'm sure you've done even more since I got this original bio. But tell us a little bit more about who are you.
Oh, well, you did such a great job. All I would add to that are the most important things. So I'm a mother, I'm a wife, a daughter, a sister, an aunt, a sister-in-law, and a suicide loss survivor,
Hmm.
which is relevant, obviously, to this conversation today.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that. So, again, I want to encourage folks to please tag a friend, let them know we are on talking about this very important topic of how to always ask about suicide. So, I will fess up and let you all know that I actually got this title from from the crisis text line Instagram account. They had a post that said this, and I thought that's a different kind of topic. And so, it intrigued me. And when I asked Dr. Turner about the possibility of talking about that, she said, yeah, that would be perfect. So here we are.
Here we are.
Here we are.
Interestingly, I always ask policy is part of our training. And
Oh,
we at Crisis Text Line have trained over 65,000 volunteers
wow.
in not just Always Ask, but in a full set of online self-paced trainings so
Hmm.
that they can help other people who are in crisis.
Awesome.
Anyone can volunteer for Crisis Text Line. And what we've found now after 10 years, so we're
Mhm.
celebrating 10 years of service,
Oh, wow.
that our volunteers not only appreciate and use the training online when they're helping texters, but
Hmm.
they use it with their families, with
Hmm.
their students, in at work, interpersonal relationships, right? And they've found that the volunteering and the work that they're doing to support others helps their own mental health
Nice,
and their own well-being and resilience.
nice, 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 nice. All right. Before we go further in our conversation, because I have a licensed professional on here, I definitely want to share my disclaimer, which is that all topics past, present, and future on Conversations with Nicole are for informational purposes only. They are not to be used as a diagnosis for treatment or an answer to any personal issues related to the topic being discussed before, during, or after the program. All right. So,
Wait, may I add one thing to that?
yes, you sure can.
This is an important topic. So Suicide Prevention Month, as we should be talking about it every month, but we're focusing on suicide this month. I
Mhm.
always like to provide a trigger warning and let people know that we potentially are going to be discussing things that may not feel comfortable or may trigger thoughts of past experiences or sadness, right? And I think everyone here should be, feel comfortable saying, like, I may have to step off, but
Mhm.
to really focus on your own self-care,
Yeah.
if you do feel triggered.
Absolutely. Thank you for that addition. I appreciate that. So, tell us a little bit about the training that you go through, the Always Ask training at the Crisis Text Line, and why this is important.
Right. So the premise of Always Ask is that anyone, and this is not just for our volunteers, but it's for, we like to share it with the general public, because what it says is that anyone at any time can have a conversation with someone else about their mental health, and that you can be clear and kind and integrate it into the conversation, to support someone who you think is struggling. And to get to that point, people feel like it's, how, I'm not a therapist. How do I ask someone about their mental health? And what it means, always ask, is that there's always an opportunity, there's always a place for us to ask. And that can be, at the dinner table, at the coffee table, on the phone, having a conversation. But it's really with clarity and kindness, telling someone in some way that you see them, you hear them, and you're concerned, and you're asking really, I see that you're experiencing something significant, or you've mentioned that a situation, for example, sounds hopeless or frustrating. And sometimes that can cause feelings of overwhelm. Are you having any thoughts of hurting yourself, death and dying, etc.? And like I said, you don't have to be a mental health professional. You just have to be there with the person to see sort of what's going on and reflect that back and tell them that they're not alone.
So that, to me, in hearing what you just stated, is very empowering, because I think oftentimes maybe loved ones, while they may sense that something is not quite right, they don't know how to approach it, right? And so, the gift of presence is very important. But I think also with that presence, being confident enough to, say the right words, right? To kind of check in with the person, or at least attempt to check in. And then, if they aren't okay, offering some solution or some help or some reprieve for them, I think is also very important.
Right. And what I want to add, one of the reasons people might not feel comfortable having this conversation and just acknowledging and elevating, it is a difficult conversation to have, right? To bring that up, excuse me, with someone just, out of the blue, right? But I want to make sure people realize that you're not, for someone who's not contemplating suicide or contemplating hurting themselves, asking these questions will not induce them or excuse me, cause them
Right.
to want to do that, right? So I know many people feel afraid that they are going, if I ask this question, it's going to plant this seed in their head,
Mhm.
and then they're going to go out and do something, and it's going to be my fault.
Right.
So there's enough data and support out there to say that that is not what's going to happen. More than likely, if this person is feeling like they are having thoughts of self-harm, it's very challenging to try to bring that to a conversation when you don't know if the other person feels prepared to handle it.
Yeah.
It's far easier to have someone see you, hear you, and ask you about your mental health and be able to say, yes, I have had thoughts of harming myself, than it is to, pick up your coffee cup and say like, hey, I've been thinking about hurting myself. That's hard. And it's particularly hard when you're in that space of isolation and loneliness.
Indeed. So I want to pause here. I see a few people that have joined us. Miss Kiosha, tuning in from Tallahassee. Thank you for being here. And Marcus Boston, who's in Tampa, he said, I was suicidal before, most depressed part of my life. Thank you for sharing, Marcus. That is tough. And I can only just imagine how down you must have been during that time. So Again, thank you for sharing and being open and honest with us tonight. We got Miss Danielle, who is a clinician in Charlotte, North Carolina. Thank you for being here, Danielle. So, as we, kind of talk through. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. We got Ozzy. Hey, Ozzy. Ozzy in Virginia Beach, a clinician in Virginia Beach, who's a regular here on the show. Thank you for being here, Ozzy. So, as we kind of talk through, just this always ask piece, and, I love that you all have at the crisis text line have this hashtag because it made it easy for me to kind of go through and see, some of the kind of campaigns or some of the tools and tips and techniques around always asking about suicide. And I think it will develop, at least I was feeling a little bit more comfortable in seeing some of the things that you all put out there. So can you just talk a little bit more about, again, some of the tips, the tools, the techniques that you all use for the always ask about
Yes.
suicide?
And we try to elevate Always Ask several
Mm-hmm.
times a year, just to remind people, for those who haven't seen it, what
Yes.
the steps are, because it's not too difficult, right? It's some things that we all can do better at, right? So one of the aspects is active listening.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're with someone, be with them, right? That means verbally and non-verbally letting them know that you're listening to them. So that means that you're making eye contact, you're nodding, you're leaning into the conversation, you're not on your phone, you're not distracted by other people. You're really sort of one-on-one with that individual. And when you do that, it shifts the conversation from you to that person. One of the things I think we all tend to do as we're listening is to try to think of what we're going to say next.
Mm-hmm.
And when we spend a lot of time doing that, we're actually missing important parts of what that person is saying, right? Because we're thinking about what we're going to answer with or how we're going to solve this for them, right? Instead, we're not giving them our full attention and our full awareness. So, really honing in on what someone is saying and how they're saying it and how you're responding, as you're listening is critical.
Yes.
We can also, when someone's going through a crisis, to know that you're focusing on them is in and of itself reassuring,
Mm-hmm.
because it conveys empathy, and empathy is the foundation. It's truly walking in someone else's shoes, beside them, with them, but really taking the time to understand without judgment what
Mm-hmm.
they are, what they're experiencing. And it can be difficult, right? It can be difficult to bring it up. It can be difficult to sit and listen, because sometimes also, right, it can stir up feelings that we have in ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
and just thanking the folks here on the show and the program who have acknowledged thoughts of suicide before, because
Yes.
it's common. It's very, very common. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes when we're supporting others, um, we're worried that it's going to stir something up in ourselves.
Yeah.
But if we can stay present and hear them, we are able to sort of be that support that they need in the moment.
Absolutely. Great points. That active listening one is really, really big. And so it's verbal and nonverbal, but it's also leaning in and, like you said, not being distracted. So very, very important. I noticed that my cousin Rennie is on in South Florida. Thank you for being here. Greetings. And she's an educator down in South Florida. So that brings to mind about the youth and some of the things that they may be dealing with, or some of the, if they have suicidal thoughts or ideations, any suggestions or offerings that you can maybe give to our educators or people that deal with youth or with children?
Yeah, I want to, and I always do in these forums, highlight, elevate, reinforce the fact that we are in a youth mental health epidemic for those who don't know that. And I'm certain that folks on tonight who are in the school system can say an amen to that, because they know they're seeing students themselves day in, day out struggling. And, we're seeing our students of color. So Black children's rates of suicide are twice that of their white counterparts, Latinx students, Indigenous students, Asian American students. So, we have to be aware that there's stressors at home. There's stressors, these are students who have lived through or living through post-pandemic isolation, the gun violence, the politics, the racial reckoning, just, in a span of a decade, what they've seen, school shootings, right? So it's no wonder that they feel anxious and stressed. It's no wonder that they have thoughts of hopelessness or of harming themselves. And I always stress that if a child says that to you, don't ever think that they're trying to just get some attention or that they're joking, because that can be the one window, the one opportunity where you can ask, right? You can ask about their mental health. You can sit and actively listen to them, right? So any adult at school can sit and actively listen to a child, especially one who allows themselves to be vulnerable enough to share that they're having thoughts of self-harm, right? And when they do that, that's a very small, could be a one-time window of opportunity to support that child. The second part of our always ask is around exploration of feelings. So if you are with a child or an adult who expresses some thoughts about self-harm, explore, right? And that means as you actively listen, you are helping to identify what the feelings are, right? And helping to explore and check in and make sure that you're understanding specifically what they're saying. And sometimes that it can help to mirror or paraphrase what you're hearing, right? So that way the person knows you're hearing them. What I'm hearing you say is that you're feeling hopeless.
Yeah.
Right. And then kind of summarizing what you've heard and naming, right? It takes a lot of courage to have gone through what you went through.
Yeah. So as you mentioned that, I think of nonviolent communication. I'm not sure you're familiar with that. So I participated with Dr. Cindy Bigby's nonviolent communication training, and there is in nonviolent communication is checking in and this questioning of what needs, maybe the need for certain things. And so because sometimes words can't express it, or we don't have the words to express what we're going through. And in that questioning, it's just trying to get the person to kind of identify what they're going through.
Right. Because in the moment when you are depressed or anxious or overwhelmed, all those feelings just take over.
Yeah.
And you can't always articulate the specifics, right? But if someone is able to sit with you and say and indicate, I see you, I hear you, let's explore let's talk about what you're experiencing, and then kind of making it into helping them to make it into, manageable bites, right? Because it seems so vast. But then sometimes when I work with people, it's around just listing out your fears, right? Because sometimes putting it on paper makes you realize that there's 5 things that are stressing me out, not 50. But
Right.
because they're all sort of orbiting around and stirring up these feelings for me, I can't even distinguish what those 5 are. But
Mm,
now that you asked me and we sat here and articulated this, I can see some light, right? And if if we sit here together and focus on each issue and what might be a solution, I feel more confident, right?
mhm.
And that's not about trying to fix someone or fix someone's situation. It's really about helping them, collaborating with them, as opposed to trying to, you know, interject and tell them how to do better,
Yeah.
right? I firmly believe that the answers lie within us. And
Yes.
sometimes it's having someone sit and ask you, um, my next the next step, which would be open-ended questions,
Hmm.
right? Questions where it helps to continue the exploration.
Hmm.
You're asking about feelings. A closed-ended question, for example, is one that ends in yes or no,
Right.
right? And the person who's talking doesn't have anywhere else to go because they've answered the question.
Hmm.
But when you have an open-ended question, it helps you to understand better, and it encourages the other person to share more and elaborate, so that together you're collaborating on a solution, right?
Yes.
It's different to sit and say, "All right, tell me your problems." When you do
Mhm.
that, you tend to ask a lot of questions in sequence, which doesn't help the person because they start to feel like you're interrogating them instead of working with them. But you sit with them, you collaborate, and you try to find a solution together, empowering the person you're talking to by helping them to see that they actually oftentimes have the solution within, but they
Yes.
just need someone there to kind of to walk through that
Yeah.
process with them.
Yes, I love that. I see a few more people that have joined us, so I definitely want to give them a shout out. Miss Carmen in Atlanta. I actually met Miss Carmen today, so I thank you for being on here. We got Miss Brandy Tyler McIntosh on here as well in Tallahassee. Thank you for being here. And Miss Talithia Edwards in Tallahassee as well. She said, "Hello. I love the open-ended questions, always get you to the answer. Those light bulb moments." Yes, the aha moments, right? Yes. So Marcus had a question. He wanted to know, how can you tell if they are lying about their well-being? Mm.
So I think we all have a sense of when someone is able to or willing to share what they're truly feeling versus presenting a facade,
Right.
right? And it's not necessarily about decoding,
Mhm.
right? I think you're not telling me the truth, right? That will automatically put someone on the defensive. But instead, going back to those steps, right? Active listening,
Mhm.
exploring, right? You can say, I hear what you're saying about being fine, right?
Mhm.
But I've seen X, Y, and Z, which makes me concerned that there still might be something else going on.
Mhm.
Would it be possible to talk about it a little bit more, right?
Mhm. I
So,
love how you phrase that.
oh, good. Well, because you want to continue to allow someone to feel heard,
Mhm.
and to know that they're not alone. And they may not be ready in that very moment that you ask them if they're okay or ask about self harm or thoughts of death or dying. But again, you can continue to try to probe the conversation. But if they really don't, they won't answer. But
Mhm.
you can still leave it at, I'm here for you, right? If at any point in the future you want to talk about this, please know that I want to hear and I want to help.
Mm.
You can't force someone to disclose because they just may not be ready. But to know that you're there and available will go a long way. And you never know when they might take you up on that.
Yes. Love all of that. I'm taking all of the notes right now. Okay. I just want y'all to know. I see Miss Chandra has joined us. She is in Tampa. Thank you for being here. So, we are about halfway through our conversation. For those of you who may be just joining us, this is Mindset Monday. September is Suicide Prevention and Awareness Month, and I am on with Dr. Shairi Turner of the Crisis Text Line, and we're talking about how to always ask about suicide. How to always ask about suicide. We've talked about active listening. We've talked about exploring. We've talked about things that you can say when maybe you don't think they're being 100% truthful about their well-being, but we want um, our loved one or whoever we're talking to about their maybe their well-being and their maybe suicidal thoughts or ideations, that we're here for them, right?
Right.
Regardless whether they're prepared to talk about it right now or not, we're here. And if they want to talk about it in the future, we will still be here for them, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's fairly simple, right? Those are three things to remember: active listening, exploration of feelings, and open-ended questions.
Yeah.
And if you're wondering whether your, you know, questions are open-ended before you ask them, can this person answer with a yes or a no,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or are you asking a lot of why questions? Because that
Mm-hmm.
can tend to feel judgmental,
Yes.
or like you you're interrogating, right? So
Mm-hmm.
how and what, and an example we use sometimes is, so like, it sounds like your friend Nicole is really upsetting you.
Mm-hmm.
What has she done to make you feel that way, right? And then that's totally open, and it allows them to really dive into the situation, their feelings, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to start that kind of collaborative problem solving.
Yes. Yeah, no, that's all really, really good. Really, really good. And so again, we had some educators on the live, that deal with our youth, and you were telling us about the crisis that many of our youth are in, and how, indeed a lot of that was brought out with the pandemic. And so just, the numbers have gone up, especially amongst youth of color, Black youth, Latina youth. And so we definitely want to be sensitive to, um, just the things that they are going through, and being there for them. I did take a youth mental health first aid course not long ago. And one of the number one things that the instructor talked about, um, that was a deterrent, if you will, from you dying by suicide, was having a safe adult that they could communicate
Mhm.
with.
Yes.
And so I just want to say that, for the, adults out there that are in the lives of young ones, whether they be related to you, nieces, nephews, cousins, or just you deal with them, through being a coach or a mentor or a teacher or a counselor or what have you, you just have no idea how important your presence in their lives is. You
It
have
really
no
it really is. They're going through so much, and we're seeing these, the exponential rise in suicide amongst our children, and
idea.
we have not we're bearing witness to it, and we're not wrapping our minds around um, how to stop it,
Yeah.
how to fully deal with it, how to address all the sources that may be contributors or co-contributors
Yeah.
to their experiences. And their experience could be very unique. And it's all the things that we listed out. Some may be more impactful in the lives of some children than others.
Mhm.
And I think it's important for us to understand, like, what the role is and what my be causing this increase in suicide, but the stressors are not going to go away. Like, let's be clear there. So it's equally, if not more important, to focus on how we support and develop resilience and help children to develop coping strategies to deal with the stress. And we actually did a study at Crisis Text Line and have a report, our youth resilience report, which showed the top coping strategies. And it's not a surprise, but it was very interesting to see this. But across the ages for young people, music was a top coping strategy, right? And sometimes parents get frustrated when kids have their music on loud or their headsets on, but now we should understand really that that's a way of them calming themselves down and dealing with a situation so that their emotions don't take over. So I would say, let's think twice before we separate a child from their music, because we now know that music is a top coping strategy. And, to your point about adults, you can be that one safe adult for a child, right? Parents sometimes are, sometimes aren't. Parents are people who were raised by other people, right? And we all carry our own traumas.
Yes.
So we can't always expect that parents are able to see outside of themselves in a way that is healthy for their children's mental health.
Yeah.
So if you as an adult interact with children or even a child and can be there to support or recognize or elevate when you see that child is struggling, and let them know that they're not alone, you have no idea what impact that really might have.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. So we have Sister Ebonice Unya on. She said, greetings, peace, and blessings, everyone. Sending positive energy for healing and prosperity. She further says that suicide is definitely on the rise. Thank you for sharing your knowledge about such a sensitive subject. Thank you, my sister. And then Sister Latanya, who is in the Atlanta area, and she also works with youth. She has a nonprofit that is focused on speaking life into young people. So thank you for being here. My sister said she took the youth mental health first aid training too, who she is also an educator. She teaches English in South Florida. And Miss Nikki Parker is on, and she said, yes, music inspires. It really does. It really does. So, you talked about coping skills, and we absolutely have to encourage our young people and ourselves to have some healthy coping skills that, when we find ourselves in difficult times of crisis, we can, lean on those to help get us through, right?
Yes. Yeah. And other strategies include, talking to other people, rest. Sleep is very, very important in our ability to cope with difficult situations. You can't handle it when you're sleep deprived.
Yeah.
And I think we need to acknowledge for the children in our life, they're not getting enough sleep, whether it's, getting up to go to school early, staying up late, doing homework, all that compounds on their mood and their resilience. So sleep is a coping strategy as well. So hesitate before you go in and wake your child up on a weekend. They really may need that sleep.
Yeah.
Relationships, talking to others is critical to helping children cope. And I think the thing that's important is to work with a child to problem solve. Because if we think, as adults, sometimes situations get so out of hand and feel so out of control. So you can only imagine for children where, their lives have so many things that they can't control, how it can feel overwhelming. So be mindful and, work with the children that you may encounter and to kind of dive into what they're struggling with and help them to figure out what are some solutions.
Indeed. My sister said high schoolers definitely don't get enough sleep.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah. So that is, again, very important because, if you don't get enough sleep, it's so many, um, there's such a ripple effect.
Yeah.
And even things that we don't even recognize, the impact that sleep deprivation has on our bodies. So,
Yeah. It's
yeah.
like a leaking faucet in your house. It goes everywhere. And
Mhm.
sleep deprivation not just affects our mood, our behavior, our physical health.
Mhm.
So we have to prioritize sleep. It's part of the package.
We do. We do. Ozzy, Daniel was on, he had a topic, and it was called Don't Sleep on Sleep.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. No,
Yes.
he's absolutely right. And there's so much data now to support this.
Yes.
Parts 1 and 2, right?
Indeed, indeed. All right. So Ebonice said, one thing I've noticed is correlation between music and our emotions. If we tune into higher frequencies like 5 to 8 hertz music, it can heal the mind, body, and spirit. Most music we listen to is on a
Mhm.
low vibration. It dumbs us down and our emotional intelligence takes a hit. There are other hertz frequency music that helps us heal.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Brought the
Indeed.
science to it.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. Thank you for sharing that. So, we've talked about some coping strategies for youth, which we also adults can benefit from some of those strategies as well. I think that the last thing that you mentioned was helping them to problem solve. I think that is so important
Yeah.
as well because I'm finding oftentimes some of these young people are not quite resilient, and the least little thing that happens, they just kind of fall apart.
Yeah. But, they've been through a lot, right? Like we still don't know the full effect of what the pandemic both has done to their minds, right? And they're these important developmental years and what it's taught them about the world, right? Because having gone through isolation in varying degrees, has just taught them, anything can happen, right? One day you're in school or you're on spring break, and
Yep.
the next day you're shut down. The whole country is shut down, right?
Mhm.
So anything goes.
Yeah.
Anything is possible for them after that.
Yeah.
And I think as adults, we don't necessarily take that fully into consideration when kids are still appearing fragile to us because they're still dealing with the ramifications and the repercussions of the pandemic.
Indeed. All right. So Marcus is talking about a friend who disappeared. He reached out to them, but they did not return his call or text. Social media went quiet. They finally contacted him after attempting suicide. He was shocked and cried. Yeah.
Yes, I'm sorry, Marcus. That's a lot to go through, and especially when you had a sense that sounds like you had a sense that something was going on,
Yeah.
but couldn't reach that person. And that's a familiar story,
Mhm.
to have to try to support someone. Again, it's like I hear you, I see that something's not right, but you give it your best to let that person know that they're not alone because oftentimes it's that like shutting down and isolation, disconnecting from social media, disconnecting from friends, that
Mhm.
is kind of a warning sign, and it compounds the feeling of isolation.
Yeah.
So when you see that happening to a friend or a family member, take as much action as you possibly can,
Mhm.
right? So call, text, show up, right? Go to their house because you could be there in that moment that they need you.
Mhm.
And just by showing up and saying, I'm here, let me sit with you and let's get help for you. can make a big difference.
So you mentioned go by their house. That caused me to think about wellness checks,
Yeah.
right? And so I know that uh, I've heard of people contacting law enforcement so that they can do a wellness check. Um, go by someone's house and to make sure that they're safe, because maybe you haven't talked to them in quite some time and it's kind of outside of their normal pattern of behavior to go unseen, unheard, that sort of thing.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, so law enforcement does do wellness checks. There's nothing, if we're able to do a wellness check for a friend or a relative,
Mm-hmm.
that's, can be even better because it's less jarring, right?
Right.
So to have law enforcement show up at your house, even under the auspices of a wellness check, can still be very frightening for
Yeah.
some.
Yeah.
So, but checking in,
Mhm.
checking in, checking someone out, asking if they're home, seeing if they're home. If you can't get into their house and you believe something's wrong, yes, call law enforcement to support. Call an ambulance for support.
Mhm.
It's it's better to be safe than sorry.
Right.
Really.
Indeed. 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 Sister Ebonice said there's also another issue plaguing our society: solar forcing and the effect of CMEs on our psyche, which is definitely causing the happening effect on not just humans but also animals. I see. It seems like there are some things kind of going on, kind of cosmically, where just things are kind of thrown off kilter, you know and not just humans, but as she's stating, like animals, like nature.
Yeah.
um yeah. And so I think we definitely experienced a bit of that during the pandemic. I feel like I don't know, it's almost if the earth was kind of crying out, I need a break.
Yeah. I
And
need a break from you humans, right? Like,
mhm,
and then I'm going to start back in with the storms and the fires and the all of the natural disasters should
mhm,
be messages to us in some way, shape, or form about
absolutely.
our presence on this earth, and both how we're treating the earth
Mm,
and how we're treating each other.
yes, absolutely. All right, Ozzy said this is a great topic conversation tonight indeed. Well,
Thank
good.
you, Ozzy.
Glad you're enjoying it. So, what would you say to someone who, again, is maybe not feeling quite comfortable with asking about suicide, but does want to show up for someone, um, in
Well,
some type of meaningful way?
yes. So I would be remiss if I didn't remind them that crisis text line is available.
Hmm.
So you can share with friends, family, 741 and have them save it into their phone. If they don't need it right in the moment, they can have it when they are in a crisis. And we always say a crisis to you is a crisis to us, meaning that our volunteers are really prepared to help anyone in any situation, whether it's homework, relationships, or suicidal ideations, or pre-suicide attempts. People have called us, as have texted us as they are contemplating dying by suicide. So having that resource available in your phone, in the phones of the people that you care about, so that at any time, day or night, English or Spanish, they can reach out and they'll be received by a trained volunteer who is supervised by a mental health professional, who's available to listen, to explore, to work with them on strengths and coping strategies, and be available in that moment.
Nice. Thank you for sharing that. We have Mr. London Arrington on, and his question is: has suicide always been a part of the Black community, or have we been influenced by European culture, or has slowing down because of COVID exposed what was behind the curtain?
So I remember, so we followed CDC data generally for and other reported data on suicide. And it did not used to be, it was not previously um, such a killer of people of color, right? Suicide was not such a cause of death for people of color. So that has shifted in pre-pandemic, like that had already started, but I think the pandemic exacerbated it.
Mhm.
Um, you can always look at social media as a way of recognizing that we're seeing more, but the statistics actually do provide evidence that suicide rates are increasing amongst people of color.
Mhm.
So it was not, but it now is.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, you said that COVID has exacerbated it, and he's asking, has it exposed what was behind the curtain? You know,
Yeah.
I I think that maybe to some extent, and this is coming about just as we're kind of talking about it real time, but perhaps maybe some of the cases may have been, or some of the encounters may have been unreported
Mhm.
potentially.
It's entirely possible. So it is, I should say, it's entirely possible that when we were seeing lower rates comparing African Americans to white people decades ago, that there was a degree of of
Mhm,
underreporting.
mhm,
What COVID did do, it was an accelerant around people kind of not just struggling with their mental health in the context of isolation and loneliness, but starting to speak about it.
yeah,
So where we are seeing, we were seeing athletes, we were seeing celebrities elevate the fact that they wanted to prioritize their mental health, that they were putting careers on hold for their mental health, and they started giving voice to the discussion, right? And when we can talk about it, we can start to both feel some camaraderie and connection around it, right?
mhm,
Because if I can talk about my mental health and you can talk about yours, we have a shared conversation and again, connection and decreased loneliness.
yeah,
So the pandemic kind of pushed everybody to the edge where they're just like, I can't take it anymore and I can't be quiet about it either.
mhm,
And when we've given voice to it, people who wouldn't otherwise say, I'm going to my therapist, hear
mhm,
everybody else talking about going to their therapist and feeling better,
yeah,
right? And so maybe I'm going to reach out and find a therapist for myself and just see what it's about.
mhm,
And lo and behold, it's actually helpful.
right. So his follow-up question was, why is it on the rise? I think you've kind of answered that. I don't know if you wanted to add anything more
You
to
know, I
okay.
think there's so many factors,
Yeah.
right? And if we could put our finger on each individual, and I think different stressors affect people differently.
Mhm,
We are a community that has experienced historical trauma,
yeah.
right? Slavery is still a trauma that impacts our genetics and our um, interactions and our view of ourselves.
Mhm,
And when you layer upon that trauma in our communities, so community violence, trauma in the homes, and understanding that trauma crosses all races, all socioeconomic boundaries, right? But it is, racialized trauma is specific to people of color, right?
mhm,
So there's that, there's the pandemic, there's financial instability, there's politics. Take your pick, right? Because
right.
it can be a bit of you know, a bingo card, right, for folks in insofar as what pushes people to the edge,
Yes.
right? So we have to keep our eye on what are the stressors,
Mhm,
but equally we have to look at how do we build people up? What is it we need to give to folks so that they have the resources when they are feeling suicidal to go somewhere, to do something, to be with someone. And through conversations like this with Nicole, we hopefully are giving people the idea that they can seek out support. That crisis text line is available. Many other resources are available. Your families, your friends, finding a therapist now post-pandemic with telemental health is actually more accessible, far more accessible than it was.
Absolutely.
So, the pandemic accelerated a lot of things, but it really brought mental health to people's homes in ways that it wasn't always possible prior to the pandemic.
Indeed. So a few comments. Marcus said, we know slaves jump overboard on slave ships. And we got DJ Demp on with us. Thank you for being here. Appreciate you. Founder of Demp House, Demp Foundation. So, I know mental health is near and dear to his heart. Ebonice said, as a spiritual leader in the community, there are many concerns from several families. In my investigations, generational curses are being broken and family secrets are needing to be exposed to help with the spiritual aspects of things. And further, she said, many people are really waking up, having breakdowns in order to break through these generational curses, dysfunctional families, religion, etc. We need to restore our spiritual relationship in truth and in order with God or the divine. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I would put that in the context and add to that, just saying, generational trauma.
Yeah.
Right. Until we start speaking about the abuse and neglect and family dysfunction that has existed within our families, we can't heal from that. So she's absolutely right. Like elevating that, talking about it, working through it, getting the therapy you need, will break those cycles.
Yeah, for sure.
Help to break them.
Absolutely. London said, bingo. The internet has given voice to the ignorant and the intellectual. From your professional perspective, how do you use that platform for the good energy that decreases the trauma that we're dumping on ourselves?
Well, I mean, what we're doing here tonight is hopefully creating positive energy.
Yeah.
Recognizing that you can seek out and find all sorts of negative energy on the internet. And we have to protect our psyche. We have to protect our mind by not sitting and engaging in it all, right? Like in the same way that she spoke about, the higher frequency music, like look for higher frequency content, right? Where you're seeking out the positive, you're turning off the news cycles because they will just pull you in.
Yeah.
And they're not and drain you. And they're not going to, it's always the specials that are about good things, but the regular news is 9 times out of 10 going to talk about death, dying, and destruction.
Yep.
So we have to turn off the elements that are being poured into our minds, whether that's the TV or, the news that's accessible through your phone or through Twitter or basically anywhere you look that has a screen, you will 9 times out of 10 find yourself drawn into something traumatic or negative as opposed to positive and uplifting. So we all have to be intentional about our mental health and well-being by curating what's coming in all the time. And that means either deciding what you bring in or turning off what's out there and automated.
Yes.
At you.
DJ Demp calls it pushing positivity.
Yes.
Pushing positivity. And we got to do that. Sister Ebonice said, we are what we eat.
Exactly.
And what we eat is not what we actually put in our mouths, but what we are consuming. In terms of what we are seeing and what we are hearing.
Yep.
So it has an impact on you. You think it doesn't, but it absolutely does.
No question.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. So we are at the end of our conversation. Oh,
Thank
listen, look, Dimp just said because they share more negativity. I tell people change your algorithm, search more
you.
positive content. Yes,
Yes.
yes. Like Conversations with
Yes.
Nicole.
Post and repost.
Yes, post
Post and
and repost.
repost.
Like, share, comment. Yes, I appreciate it. But we are at the end of our conversation, which has been absolutely fantastic. But before we close out, I want to give you an opportunity, Dr. Shairi Turner, to give some closing remarks and tell folks how they can connect with you.
Yes. So you can connect with us through Crisis Text Line. I am at Dr. Shairi, and Crisis Text Line is at Crisis Text Line on Instagram, on LinkedIn, Facebook. We put out content all the time to help elevate mental health and well-being. Uh, please take a moment after this to save 741-741 into your phone so it's easily accessible for you or anyone else in their moment of need.
Yes, love it. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
You are welcome. All of her information is at the bottom of the screen, as well as the the crisis text line, the crisis text line. So definitely text them, reach out to them, follow them. They have great content
Please.
on Instagram. I'm sharing their stuff in the story quite often. So I hope this has been beneficial to you all. If it has, let us know in the comments. Let us know. And please, 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 please pass this along. Like and share it. Tag somebody that you think will benefit from this conversation. Again, it is Suicide Awareness Month. I know this can be kind of a taboo topic, but we need to be
We
talking
have to.
about it. How to always ask about suicide. She gave us the tips, you know, active listening, exploring feelings, and open ended questions. So let's do it, y'all. It means so much. You may very well save a life.
Yeah.
Mhm. All right. So, Chandra, this was great. Thank you,
Thank you.
Chandra. Sister Ebonice, thank you. Your service is needed in all communities. Yes, it is. Thank you so much. Miss Kiosha, great conversation. Thank you for your support, Kiosha. Brandon, my LT classmate, said great discussion. Thanks so much for talking about such an important topic. Thank you, my brother. He's over at FSU too, working with the young people. And Miss Sharice DeBose, my classmate. Great evening, everyone. As always, great topic. Looking for the good from a negative situation. Absolutely. So we pushing positivity, as Dip says, and we got to talk up suicide, ask about suicide, especially from folks that we are sensing maybe uh, talking about hurting themselves, harming themselves, not being around. So, don't be afraid. And if it seems like too much for you to do, refer them to the crisis text line. Okay.
Absolutely. We are here to serve.
Absolutely. All right, good people. We will be on Wednesday, God willing, for Wellness Wednesday. Melissa Como is on, and let me quickly look up our topic for Wednesday. It is "You are worthy to live in your purpose." You are worthy to live in your purpose.
Love
Yes,
that.
yes. So hopefully we'll see y'all Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. All right, y'all have a great rest of the evening, great rest of the week, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.